Lesson 7.6, multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. Now when you multiply a polynomial by a monomial, you're going to use distributive property and multiply every part that's outside the parentheses times the polynomial. In example 1, you see that outside the parentheses is a 6y. Now 6y is going to have to be multiplied times all three parts inside our polynomial. So we're going to do 6y first times 4y squared. And then we're going to do 6y times negative 9y. And then we're going to do 6y times negative 7. So all this is distributive property with more variables. So now let's actually multiply. 4 times 6 is 24. Now the y and the y squared make y cubed. You already have y squared, and when you add one more y with that, that makes y to the third. The next part, 6 and negative 9. That multiplies into negative 54. And a y times another y makes a y squared. And lastly, 6 times negative 7 is negative 42. And then you just put a y behind it because there's nothing for that y to be multiplied by. And that is how you multiply a monomial times another polynomial. And that's your answer. You don't do anything else to it. Next. Now, here's a second problem. And I'm going to set this one up vertically so you can see that what you learned in elementary school still works today. Now, back in elementary school, you learned how to multiply, say, 4-digit numbers times a 1-digit number. And that's what you have here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts times a single 9b to the squared. And the same way that you would multiply 1,234 times 2 is you would start with the 2, times it by the 4 and get 8. Then you would multiply 2 times 3 and get 6. Then you would do 2 times 2 and get 4. And lastly, you would do 2 times 1 and get 2. And that would be your answer. Well, the same thing happens in this problem. If you take your 9b squared and put it on the bottom here, you simply multiply it one at a time times each of the 4 parts. 9b squared times negative 8. 9 times negative 8 is negative 72. B squared. Then you move on to the next part. 9b squared times b. 9b cubed. And then the third part, the negative 3 and the positive 9 will make negative 27. B squared and b squared is b to the 4th. And then lastly, all the way over the end, 2 times 9 makes 18. B cubed, b squared makes b to the 5th. And that's your answer for that one. Now, if you don't like this method where you multiply vertically, then just go back and do the same thing we did in example A. I just wanted to show you that it doesn't matter if you multiply distributive property sideways or you multiply distributive property vertically like you did in elementary school. You still get the same answer. Doesn't matter how you do it. All right, let's move on to slide 3. All right, here are 2 problems that you're to try. So you should pause here and see if you get these right on your own. All right, distributive property. 5 times negative 4 It's negative 20. A squared, a to the fourth. 5a squared times 2a. 5 times 2 is 10. A squared times a cubed. And lastly, 5 times negative 7, negative 35, and tack that a squared onto the end. And that's the answer. All right. Pause, or we'll go on to B. First up, negative 6 and 3. Negative 6 and 3 is negative 18. D and d to the fourth makes d to the fifth. Next step, negative 6 and negative 2 will make positive 12. D and d cubed is d to the fourth. Third part, negative 6 and a negative. That just makes the 6 positive. D squared. And lastly, negative 6 and 9 make negative 54, d, because there's nothing else for that d to multiply. Okay? All right, moving on with slide 4. Okay, first up, if you notice, there are now 2 parentheses in this problem. There's the first part and the second part. So we will do each part independently. So first up, 3 times 2t squared. 3 times 2, 6t squared. 3 times negative 4t, negative 12t. And then 3 times negative 15 makes negative 45. Okay, that takes care of the yellow part. Now, for the second part, 6t and 5t. 6 times 5, that makes 30. T is t squared. And then lastly, 6t times 2. 6 times 2 makes 12t. Okay, now we've got 5 terms. And if you notice, some of them are common. 6t squared and 30t squared. Those are like terms. Add them together, that makes 36t squared. So if you have common terms, you're going to have to combine them. Next, negative 12t and positive 12t. Well, a negative 12 and a positive 12 cancel out. They make 0, so they're not even part of the answer anymore. And then the only thing left is to bring down your minus 45. So that's our final answer. After you do distributive property, if there's like terms to combine, you should combine them. Now, here's one for you to try. So you should pause and try B. Remember, do the first part and then do the second part. Keep in mind that x has a negative sign with it. Use the negative with the x as you do that problem. Okay, 3 times 5, 15x squared. 3 times 2, 6x. 3 times minus 4, negative 12. Second part, negative x. Well, negative x is just going to change the 7 to a negative 7. But x and x squared makes x cubed. And then negative times positive 2 will make that a minus 2. X and x, x squared. And then lastly, negative x and negative 3 will make a positive 3x. Now we look for things that are common. Well, I noticed the 15x squared and the negative 2x squared. So what's 15 minus 2? Perfect. 13x squared. And anything else? 6x and 3x. Together they make 9x. Now I got two more pieces. I have a minus 12, which doesn't have anything to combine with. So I'll put minus 12 down. And then lastly, I have this negative 7x cubed. Now normally we just put the leftovers on the end. But if you notice, and if you remember last lesson, we put things in standard form. Already things are going downhill. 2, 1, and there's obviously no exponent with the 12. So we want to put the 7x cubed in the very front. That way all of my exponents are decreasing. 3, 2, 1, 0. And don't forget that since this 13 needs a symbol here, and since it's not negative, I'm going to put a plus sign. So that's our final answer. 7x cubed. Oh, don't forget the minus sign in front of the 7 because it was negative. So negative 7x cubed plus 13x squared plus 9x minus 12. All right, last slide. Okay, now we're going to look at solving equations again. So, don't let the size of the problem intimidate you. It's not that hard of a problem once you get rid of the distributive property and combine the like terms. So let's start with that. There's a parenthesis here and on the right side. So let's get rid of those parentheses first thing. B times 12 is 12b. B times b, b squared. Bring down your minus 7, your 2b, and let's do distributive property on the right. B times minus 4, minus 4b. B times b, b squared. Now we'll look, since we have an equal sign, we can't just combine like terms. Instead, remember, what you have on one side, you have to do to the other. If you notice there's a b squared on both sides, since it's positive, you should minus b squared. That will cancel both of them out. Bringing down the rest of the problem, 12b minus 7 equals 2b minus 4b. You see, there's no b squares in the problem anymore. All of these problems that we're going to be working on, the b squared will cancel out. So combine like terms. 2b minus 4b is negative 2b. Now, if you notice, there's a 12b on one side and a negative 2b on the other. And there's only one number, 7. So let's leave the 7 where it is. And for once, let's subtract the bigger number, which is 12b. That way, the negative 7 is all by itself. I get negative 2 minus 12 is negative 14b. So my variables are on one side, my constants are on the other. Last step, divide by negative 14. And if you do a little symmetric and flip this around, you'll get 0.5. So b equals 0.5, or you know that as 1/2. Okay? Well, the last one's down here is for you to solve. So, take a minute and pause and solve b. Okay, so d squared plus 3d minus d squared plus 4d. If you notice, the two negative signs made the d squared negative, but the negative and negative 4 made positive. Then combine the like terms. D squared minus D squared. Those two cancel out. Equals 0. Other like terms, 3 and 4 make 7. I got a 9D and a 7D. Normally I would subtract a smaller one, but in this case, 16 is the only number in this problem. So I'm going to get rid of the 9D instead. That gives me negative 2D equals negative 16. Divide by negative 2, and D equals 8. These problems just look really long to start out, but once you get in them, the D squares will cancel out, you combine some like terms, and the problem gets really short. Hope this was helpful.